This is Part 2, Episode 76. The three biggest black markets had decided to organize their own tournament and exploit the opportunity of the Continental Elite Youth Soul Master Tournament to earn profits, without angering Xu Qianran. To make it sound nice, they claimed that they were furthering the development of soul tools in the Sun Moon Empire. The tournament wasn't very strict. The only two requirements were that the soul engineers had to be under 30, and they had to create Class 4 soul tools in the qualifiers. If they passed, they could advance to the next round, where they could truly compete. One could bet on the qualifiers. The bet was very simple, the number of people who could pass the qualifiers. One could bet on an absolute number, or whether it would be an odd or even number of people who qualified. The returns were a few multiples, and varied depending on the selections. The qualifiers were being held right now. Creating soul tools wasn't as quick as a fight, so the soul engineers were given 3 days for the first round. The future rounds in the tournament would also be elimination rounds, but the topic for each round would change. The three black markets even specially invited a member of the imperial family, a powerful Class 9 soul engineer, to be the chief referee. 12 Class 7 and above soul engineers were also chosen to be the referee committee in this tournament, so as to ensure the fairness of the tournament and betting system. The things they had to do were simple. They wanted to draw in the ordinary citizens, nobles, and wealthy individuals who wanted to gamble by exploiting the hype of the Continental Elite Youth Soul Master Tournament. Their aim was to make as much profit as possible. So far, they had been very successful in this aspect. More than 100,000 people had bet in their tournament already, and the amount of money involved was undoubtedly very great. To draw sufficient numbers of outstanding soul engineers to compete, the rewards of the tournament were all rare metals. From the first round, those who qualified for the next round would be rewarded. This even applied to the qualifiers. As the rounds progressed, the rewards would increase. Soul engineers could ignore money, but they had to have rare metals. They could create soul tools to earn money, but rare metals might not be available even if one had money. This was especially true in this tournament, since the rare metals were all being used as rewards for the competitors. There was even competition between the three black markets. That was why there were 3 competing venues for the tournament. The winners in each venue would compete against one another. When that happened, the wager between the 3 black markets would also involve rare metals. All this was why Nana couldn't obtain any rare metals, even though she was willing to offer a high price. After listening to Nana, Hu Yuhao sank deep into thought. He asked, "Nana, are there any requirements to register for this tournament?" Nana shook her head and said, "It's very simple. One cannot be above 30 years old, and must be confident in competing in the qualifiers. Finally, there's a registration fee of 100 gold soul coins." Wang Dong's expression changed, and she said, "Yu Hao, don't tell me you're thinking of competing." "No, it's too dangerous. This is Radiant City. There are also many powerful soul engineers there." An hour later, the sky had already turned dark. Perhaps everyone's energy was depleted because of the tournament in the day, but the night seemed very quiet. There were very few people roaming the streets, and most people had already retired to bed. At a street corner around 300 meters from the Mingyu Hotel, the light seemed to distort at a pitch-black corner. Following this, 4 figures surfaced. Hu Yuhao was still in his wheelchair, but his wheelchair was covered by a black cloth, and his appearance had changed greatly. Compared to before, he was much more handsome, and there were many changes to small details. Even if there were familiar faces around him, they wouldn't be able to recognize him unless they could deduce his identity using the wheelchair he was in. Wang Dong was still dressed like a man. Her appearance was very cold and tough, and she also looked much more ordinary. On the whole, she seemed like an extremely normal and aloof young man. The greatest change in Hikaitu was his hair. He was wearing a brown wig that helped to cover his bright and shiny bald head. His wig reached his shoulders, and there was a black mask on his face. His complexion was also paler. Along with a thick, black robe, he seemed very mysterious. Nana's transformation was the simplest. She put on makeup to look like a maid. Her simple transformation made her look very pitiful. She stood beside Hu Yuhao's wheelchair. Her deference towards him didn't need to be faked. Hikaitu was impressed. "Junior, your imitation is getting stronger and stronger. We were completely unrecognizable just now as we left the hotel. No one will suspect us." Hu Yuhao smiled and said, "Second senior, let's refer to ourselves differently from now on. I'm in a wheelchair, So I'll have no choice but to take advantage of all of you. We are brothers now, and I'll call you Big Brother. You can call me Second Brother. Donga and Nunna are my servants. They'll call me Master. I'll call the two of them Little Dong and Little Na. Wang Donga snapped and said, "You are intentionally taking advantage of us." Hui Yu Hao chortled, "No. Isn't that just logical? Call me Master." Wang Donga pursed her lips as she saw his sly look. She snorted, and her voice turned very manly as she said softly, "Mars." "Master." Hui Yu Hao chuckled, "Be more natural. Come on, one more time." Wang Donga lifted her hands, as if she wanted to do something. However, she couldn't bear to lay her hands on him seeing that he was in a wheelchair. She turned her head and ignored him. "Let's go. It isn't early anymore. Let's follow the plan." In Radiant City's underground world, there were three main organizations. They were the Duskwater Alliance, the Common Alliance, and the Alto Chamber of Commerce. The Common Alliance controlled the sex industry in Radiant City, and was probably the shallowest underground power. The Alto Chamber of Commerce controlled assassin and thieves associations, as well as some evil powers. They made a living by collecting protection fees and committing murders and theft, as well as through other illegal means. The Duskwater Alliance was more advanced. They sold the most profitable medicines and arms, and trafficked people. The Common Alliance and Alto Chamber of Commerce shared a very close relationship, teaming up together to oppose the Duskwater Alliance. However, they weren't as well backed as the Duskwater Alliance. They weren't very interactive either, and only ensured a peaceful working relationship through agreements between their backers. All three underground organizations were involved in the sale of rare metals. After all, it was a very profitable trade. As long as they were given access to mining channels, they could obtain rare metals at a low cost. However, these rare metals were in very high demand, and helped them make the most profits. For example, there was a rare metal called soul-forging silver. It could fuse with any type of metal, and increase its affinity towards a soul master's soul power. At the same time, it increased the tensile strength and hardness of the metals it was fused with. It was used in almost all advanced soul tools. It was only produced in the Sun Moon Empire, and was produced in average quantities. Around 500 gold soul coins were needed to mine 1 kilo of it, but on the market, it was worth around 100 gold soul coins per 100 grams. This was a 200% profit if it was sold. How could anyone not go crazy over it? Even with the great exploitation of the mining channels, the profits were still very great. The profits that could be reaped from soul-forging silver were only considered average among rare metals. The prices of rarer metals were even more unbelievable. Such enormous profits were too alluring, and the influence of Radiant City's three main underground organizations reached every corner of the country. So it was natural that they could reap the rewards. Every year gave them immeasurable profits, and this was even under the circumstances where the country monopolized the industry, while ruling rare metals as strategic resources. The country had even prohibited exports. The three underground organizations named this competition the Radiant City Elite Soul Engineer Tournament, and it piggybacked on the reputation of the Continental Elite Youth Soul Master Tournament. Hui Yu Hao decided to choose the strongest underground organization out of the three, because this organization was also being discreetly marginalized and clamped down on by the other two, the Duskwater Alliance. He was the only one who knew the rationale behind his decision. The Duskwater Alliance's preliminary rounds were designated to be carried out at a luxurious hotel in the city center. One of the reasons this place was picked was because this hotel was not far from the Brilliant Delight Hotel, so the participants wouldn't have to travel too far away. Hui Yu Hao wasn't that mobile after all, and a long journey would be a burden on him. He couldn't just let Wang Donga push him around inside the city. The Green Hotel had a unique and characteristic name. It was a little more than a kilometer away from the Brilliant Delight Hotel, and was but 2 kilometers away from the Sun Moon Empire's royal palace, located in a very prime and profitable location. However, people often mispronounced its name, and so people easily misunderstood this place as the Romantic Love Hotel, and yet, it was because of this fact that it became quite well known. This property belonged to the Duskwater Alliance, but nobody knew if the Duskwater Alliance's headquarters were also located here. The Green Hotel was built on a smaller scale than the Brilliant Delight Hotel. There were only 5 levels above the ground, but those who were familiar with this hotel understood that its true substance was beneath the ground. There were 4 muscular men clad in black warrior robes standing outside the hotel's main door. They were all more than 2 meters tall, and they surveyed the throngs of people walking by with ice-cold eyes. Hui Yuhao and his group hadn't even come near when one of them stepped up and blocked their path. The hotel isn't open for business today. Please leave. Hui Yuhao was still sitting in the wheelchair. He smiled and said, "We're here to participate in the Radiant City Elite Soul Engineer Tournament." The man in black was stunned for a moment, but his expression then became a little gentler. Soul engineers were held in high regard within the Sun Moon Empire compared to other empires, and offending a soul engineer wasn't a smart choice even if the other party had a modest rank. "I'm sorry, soul engineer. The preliminary rounds have already begun, and they are about to end soon. You're too late." The man in black spoke with a look of regret on his face, but his expression contained a little more respect than before. Perhaps his change of attitude was also because the mysterious aura from Hikaitu affected his state of mind. Hui Yuhao also seemed a little rueful. "That's a pity. I originally believed that I could represent the Duskwater Alliance to participate in the final round, and perhaps help you guys claim the championship. How about this? I'll use 100,000 golden soul coins, and I'll wager that I can pass the preliminary rounds today. There isn't much time left anyway, so you guys will win a large sum of money even if I don't. But if I do, it also means that the Duskwater Alliance will have another relatively outstanding soul engineer to participate in the final round. This is a win-win situation for you guys, am I right?" The Green Hotel was quite rustic indeed. Its layout was extremely simple, and there was no way one could tell from its appearance that this place was the #1 location that symbolized the underground organization's influence. Furthermore, this was also one of the Duskwater Alliance's important strongholds. The hotel's layout felt smooth and sleek. There were white porcelain decorations and ornaments everywhere, and even the flooring and the walls were made of white porcelain. White and red were the main colors. Wang Donga surveyed her surroundings as she pushed Hui Yuhao's wheelchair. She thought to herself, "Are those red decorations foreshadowing fresh blood? What does all this white porcelain signify? Fresh blood amongst all the pure whiteness." The middle-aged man stopped walking once they entered the hotel and said, "My valued guests, may I know who the one that's going to participate in the competition is?" Hui Yuhao said, "My big brother and I will both join the competition." He pointed at Hikaitu beside him as he spoke. The middle-aged man nodded his head and said, "How do I address the two of you?" Hui Yuhao answered, "My big brother is called Tang San, and I am called Tang Wu." The middle-aged man's eyes sparkled. He could obviously tell that the two of them were patronizing him, and that these definitely weren't their real names. However, he didn't know that Hui Yuhao hadn't come up with these names at random. The Tang sect's original ancestor was named Tang San, so he definitely wouldn't coin an identical name for himself. Therefore, he came up with Tang San and Tang Wu. The man didn't pursue the matter any further. Many soul engineers had their own preferences and reservations, and many people were still relatively cautious. Since they were participating in an underground competition, there were quite a few contestants who used fake names. These underground organizations also definitely didn't keep their hold on these soul engineers based on their names. It was important for these organizations not to probe into these soul engineers' private information, as these organizations could only keep them here if they provided benefits. The competition has already been underway for quite some time and will end soon. Time is of the essence. Why don't the two of you verify that you guys are soul engineers first, and I will immediately arrange your entries into the competition. Also, about the wager that you just mentioned. Hui Yuhao raised his hand, and Wang Donga passed a dark golden card forward from behind him. This is the Auspicious Gold Bank's Black Gold VIP card that can be used across the continent. Xiao Na, follow this mister afterwards to place our bet. Hui Yuhao spoke plainly as he raised his right hand, and the middle-aged man saw a flash before his eyes before a short dagger appeared in Hui Yuhao's right hand. A white beam of light shot up as a razor-sharp sword aura soared into the air and howled shrilly at the sky. Hikaitu's method was even simpler. He raised his hand and unleashed an enormous soul cannon, which he pointed at the middle-aged man. Back when he had first entered the Great Star Do Forest all those years ago, he relied on the White Tiger dagger's special characteristics to survive after he was ambushed by that 10-year soul beast. The manager wiped the cold sweat from his brow as he escorted Hui Yuhao and the others to some soul elevators in the hotel's inner regions. He used a soul transmitter to pass a few messages before he directed the four of them into a lift. The lift went all the way down and stopped after about 10 seconds. When the lift's doors opened again, a cacophony of noise could be heard, along with a strong smell of paper and metal that wafted into their faces. This scene was drastically different from the main lobby's simplicity. The shiny magnificence of the hotel's underground world dazzled everyone. Everything was golden, even the mirrors. It felt as if this underground world was made entirely from gold. The manager led them out of the elevator, and they crossed an extravagant circular hall before they entering through a door right in front of them. There were 2 guards standing by the door, who immediately opened the large door when they saw the manager. It felt like they had entered another world once they stepped inside. There wasn't as much light in this place, and what light there was seemed a lot gentler. However, the sheer size of this place caused Hu Yuhao to react in astonishment. They were inside a circular domed hall, where the hall's ceiling seemed to be made of uncountable golden lines that were orderly and rhythmically intertwined together. The enormous dome provided enough light for the spacious hall, and rows of seats extended neatly down the aisle, while there were spiraling escalators that led upwards around the seats. There was a circular room hovering at the end of every flight of soul escalators, and there was no way to tell with the naked eye how those rooms were just levitating in midair. There were 8 sets of these soul escalators and hovering rooms, and forming a circle about the place. There was a circular platform in the center of the hall at least 30 meters in diameter. It wasn't as spacious as the Continental Elite Youth Soul Master Tournament's competition stage, but it was spectacular enough. This was part of the underground world, after all. There were numerous metal desks on the stage at the moment, and light flickered from time to time. There were several metal desks around the circular platform, and more than 100 metal desks on the central platform. Some metal desks were already empty. Excuse me, how many people from the Duskwater Alliance are participating in the competition? Hu Yuhao asked the manager, who was leading the way. The middle-aged man replied respectfully, "We have a total of 264 soul engineers participating in the competition. We will have 266 if we include the 2 of you. Some of these soul engineers have already completed their projects. Today's contest is only the qualifying round, so we only require participants to craft a Class 3 soul tool in order to pass the assessment. Of course, you have to finish the project within a certain period of time. Look there, every soul engineer's desk has an hourglass. However, only half of the hourglass is remaining for the last few soul engineers who joined the contest, and that means you only have about an hour left. I wonder if the 2 of you will have enough time." Hu Yuhao smiled, and the corner of his mouth flowed with subtle confidence and pride. That's enough. He was role-playing as another person and not himself, so he began to make adjustments to his demeanor and his emotions from this moment onwards. "All right, then." Hu Yuhao asked, "What is this place used for normally?" "An auction." A wary look flashed across the Naga's eyes. "Have you guys never been to our Golden Hall?" Hu Yuhao curled the corner of his lip apathetically and said, "Of course not. My family is so rich that." He paused after this, and the same wary look came over his eyes. However, the wary look in his eyes made the middle-aged man look a lot more relaxed than before. The manager smiled faintly, and a tinge of elegance could be seen in his expression. He said confidently, "That's a real pity, then. This place is an auction, and it's the largest auction house in Radiant City. Let me tell you a secret, even people from the royal family have sent people to participate in our top-tier auction. If you have time in the future, you are very welcome to participate. You will be treated like honored guests." They arrived near the arena's center as they spoke, but someone blocked their path. 2 people who were dressed the same way as the manager intercepted them. After some brief conversation, one of the 2 men that blocked their way said, "The participants can enter, but everyone else has to wait outside. Place your bets immediately." Wang Donga raised her eyebrows, but Hu Yuhao waved his hand and said, "Xiao Dong, Xiao Na, the 2 of you can go outside. Xiao Na will place the wager. I wonder what the odds are like today." The middle-aged man was momentarily stunned. He stared at the warm smile on Hu Yuhao's face, but for some reason, he began to feel a chill run down his spine. But the sensation only lasted for an instant, and he returned to normal as he said indifferently, "You're in the Duskwater Alliance's territory. If you have the ability, my life doesn't mean anything at all." Hu Yuhao nodded and said, "Very well. Show us the way." Wang Donga didn't feel very assured, but she went ahead with Nana to make the wager anyway. Hu Yuhao and He Kai-tu followed the middle-aged man that Hu Yuhao had just threatened to the competition arena. They weren't qualified to participate in the competition on stage, so they were brought to 2 metal desks in the outer corners that belonged to participants that had already finished their part in the contest. Hu Yuhao frowned and said, "You guys don't even provide materials for crafting soul tools." The middle-aged man had just been threatened, so he shot Hu Yuhao a dark look and said, "We did have some originally, but there won't be any for you because of what you said earlier. You can find your own materials since you guys are late." He turned around to leave after he finished talking, and another elderly man, clothed in yellow, walked over and stood behind the 2 of them. The other contestants were in a similar situation. "What are the rules?" Hui Yuhao asked the old man in yellow. The old man pointed to a desk not far from them that was being used for the contest. There's an hourglass over there, you guys will check the time yourselves. You have to craft a class 3 soul tool before the last grain of sand drops down in the hourglass, and you will qualify for the next round once you complete your soul tool within the stipulated time. You will be eliminated if you can't complete the task. You may begin. I will be here to watch and to ensure that you don't use finished or half-finished soul tools to cheat. Hui Yuhao turned around toward Hikaitu, and then he looked at the metal desk that was well equipped with crafting tools. He smiled and said, "Big brother, doesn't this feel familiar?" Hikaitu was wearing a mask. He naturally knew that Hui Yuhao was referring to their days inside the illustrious Virtue Hall, and he nodded. Hui Yuhao sighed and said, "Not giving us materials is just so harsh and unkind. I have to make use of what's around me, I guess." He raised his right hand as he spoke. The old man behind him saw a dark golden flash of light before one of the steel desk's corners was lopped off. The piece was half a foot thick, and the old man also saw the 5 sharp blades that flickered with dark golden radiance that extended from Hui Yuhao's right hand. The dark golden terraclaw bear was known as one of the most powerful species in the world of soul beasts. A unique and frightening aura could be felt once Hui Yuhao unleashed his dark golden terraclaw. Hui Yuhao flicked his claw upwards, and the metal piece flew towards Hikaitu. "We'll have to make do with this, big brother." Just as Hui Yuhao had said, the old man in yellow was also a soul engineer, but he was only a class 3 soul engineer. In the end, breaking through 3 rings was quite a drastic change for most soul masters, and many people couldn't breach that barrier, even across an entire lifetime. This elderly man was just a class 3 soul engineer, but his eyes were quite fine. He was part of the Duskwater Alliance, and he had seen multiple high-level soul engineers craft soul tools. What Hui Yuhao was doing at the moment was comparable to those high-level soul engineers. He was smooth, quick, and agile at the same time, and he was working at a speed that was almost impossible to believe. From a soul engineer's perspective, steel was a relatively standard crafting material that was also easy to carve and engrave. However, working at such rapid pace was simply unbelievable, and the old man knew that he couldn't do anything like Hui Yuhao. The youth before him was going through everything so casually, and he hadn't even pulled out his carving knife. This youth was just using sharp blades from his martial soul, or perhaps from a soul skill, to craft his soul tool. The silver-white steel gradually took shape. Hui Yuhao didn't use a single crafting tool from the table, but an impeccable metal tube was produced just like that. He quickly assembled, crafted, and inserted the formation arrays. Hui Yuhao used the 5 sharp claws of his dark golden terraclaw to cut, drill, slice, chisel, and whatever techniques he had to use to craft his soul tool, and he only used one hand from beginning to end. Of course, there was no way he could use his other hand even if he wanted to, but the old man didn't know that. The elderly man felt as if he wasn't watching a contest, but a performance, an incredibly spectacular performance in crafting soul tools. This process didn't continue for too long. 5 minutes, after just 5 minutes, Hui Yuhao's undulating blades halted, and his body casually turned around as he signaled to the old man, who had a blank look in his eyes. "It's done." The elderly man recovered from his astonishment, and quickly stepped forward to pick up the silver-white soul tool on the desk. The old man wiped the sweat from his brow, and stared at Hui Yuhao fearfully. "The soul tool that you have made is..." Hui Yuhao grinned and said, "It's a simplified energy-gathering soul cannon. It should be at least class 3, but class 4 soul engineers are typically more suited to operate something like this. It seems like you're not a class 4 soul engineer yet. The materials that I have had to retrieve on the spot were a little substandard, so this cannon can only be fired thrice. If you want to play around with it, you'll have to wait for me to complete the qualifying round. My part of the contest is over, have I passed?" The old man's expression was entirely different from before. He handed the soul tool back to Hui Yuhao respectfully and said, "Of course you have passed the qualifying round. You're the one who has crafted this soul tool, please take it back. The soul engineers get to keep all the soul tools that they make within this competition. Of course, you can sell your productions to us if you wish." Hui Yuhao replied, "I'll leave it to you then. Just treat it as compensation for damaging the table. That should be enough, right?" Yes, it's enough." A class 3 soul tool was worth about 3 to 5,000 golden soul coins, while Hui Yuhao didn't destroy the entire table, so repairing the table probably wouldn't require more than 10 golden soul coins. Using a soul tool like this to compensate for the damage was more than enough. Furthermore, the crafting abilities Hui Yuhao had just displayed completely astounded this invigilator. The old man asked probingly, "If I may ask, what class are you in?" Hui Yuhao smiled faintly and said, "You will know eventually. However, you have to continue with your duties. You haven't seen the soul tool that my big brother is crafting yet. The old man realized that Hikaitu's hands had stopped moving on the other side as well, and he had also crafted another soul tool from the piece cut off from the table. The soul tool that Hikaitu had crafted was a broad bracelet, the kind intended for men. The old man quickly went over to check. Is this a storage-type soul tool? A storage-type soul tool crafted from steel. Oh, my goodness. That's such a waste of your abilities. The old man didn't know what else to say. He discovered after inspecting and testing the soul tool that this broad bracelet had about 5 cubic liters of storage space, and it absolutely met the criteria as a Class 3 soul tool. Storage-type soul tools and milk bottles were typically considered the most complicated soul tools among others of the same tier. This storage-type soul tool was made from steel, and that meant it wouldn't be so durable, but its complexity and the difficulty of crafting something like this was the same as it would have been if another material had been used. It wasn't worth much, but the craftsmanship was undeniable. If there had been better metal available, this storage-type soul tool would be considered an exquisite item compared to other Class 3 soul tools. 2 Class 3 soul tools were crafted within such a short period of time. What did that mean? This meant that these two brothers, who had only joined the competition when it was nearing its end, were at least Class 4 soul engineers. It was likely that they were even better. Could Class 4 soul engineers craft soul tools with such smoothness and agility? The old man knew the answer to this question very well. The two of you have passed the qualifying round, and we will begin the first official round tomorrow. We will directly enter elimination rounds, and every elimination round will cut the total head count by a third, until a champion is crowned. Here, these are your proofs for passing the qualifying round. The two of you can use them to claim your prizes for this round. The old man passed over 2 badges made from pure gold as he spoke. There were numbers on each badge. Huiyuhao's number was 71, while Hikaitu's number was 72. Hikaitu pushed Huiyuhao's wheelchair, and they departed under the old man's watchful and respectful gaze. The old man in yellow came over hurriedly at this moment. I'm terribly sorry, my 2 honored guests. This is a misunderstanding. Hurry and apologize to them, Great King. Great King. That's a great name. Huiyuhao spoke with a faint grin on his face. The middle-aged man's expression didn't look so good, and it appeared to change color again and again. He grunted coldly and turned around to leave. Don't go. There's something else I want to discuss with you. Huiyuhao suddenly spoke to him. Great King was momentarily stunned. He turned around and forcefully suppressed the complicated emotions riling up his mind as he asked, what else needs to be said? Huiyuhao continued, I imagine I'm going to lose the wager that I've just made. Do you remember what I said to you before this? Great King's face instantly changed. He hadn't thought too much of it when Huiyuhao had threatened him before with a smile on his face, as he didn't believe that this fellow in the wheelchair could pass this round of the competition. However, the yellow-clothed old man had confirmed that the 2 brothers had both passed this round within such a short period of time. He was very clear about what this meant. Even though he was arrogant, sneering, and sarcastic by nature, he wasn't a fool. He was sharply aware that Huiyuhao wasn't a person that he could afford to offend, and he himself was only a soul elder after all. The contest isn't over. How do you know that you can't win the wager? Great King's voice was a little shaky and fearful. Huiyuhao smiled and said, I know I can't win just by looking at your face. Are you telling me that you haven't done something to my wager? I remember I saw you walk out before this. Great King took a few steps back subconsciously. Huiyuhao lowered his head instead as he muttered under his breath, my best virtue is that I always honor my word. Huiyuhao suddenly looked up as he spoke, and he pushed out his right hand towards Great King. Don't do it, sir. The old man called out hastily, but he was too late in the end. Huiyuhao grunted coldly and said plainly, do all of you wish to die? Huiyuhao began to chant incomprehensibly as he spoke. Hikaitu took a step horizontally, and a series of metal clanging sounds could be heard as he transformed into a frightening metal fortress. Several hundred soul cannons were coldly pointing all around him, and the aura he released was so terrifying that it immediately caused the thugs that were about to close in on them to retreat in fear. Stop! What's happening? A deafening shout broke the silence. A human figure descended from the sky immediately afterwards, 3 yellow and 2 purple soul rings sparkling as this person landed in the middle of everyone. The wings from the soul tool on his back folded up. He drew a cold breath when he witnessed the soul cannon fort that Hikaitu had transformed into. He was a Class 5 soul engineer, and he was all too clear as to what he was looking at. He realized that even typical Class 6 soul cannon forts weren't as formidable as this one in front of him. Calm down, everyone. I'm Chenin, the Golden Great Hall's supervisor. Can someone tell me what just happened? The old man that had watched Huiyuhao and Hikaitu came forward hurriedly and whispered something into Chenen's ear. Chenen's face turned black as he turned towards Hu Yuhao, and then his expression changed once more. He saw that Hu Yuhao's eyes were ghastly grey in color, as if there wasn't an ounce of life and vitality at all, and he felt as if his spirit was being sucked away when their gazes met. His body trembled vigorously as he took a few steps backwards in horror. However, when he looked at Hu Yuhao again, he realized that his eyes had become clear once more, as if everything that he had seen in the previous instant was but a hallucination. A voice suddenly appeared in his head. "You're right, my dear guests. Great King violated the Duskwater Alliance's rules, and he attacked you foolishly. He has committed a crime, and he cannot be forgiven. Someone take his body away, and feed his corpse to the dogs. Don't stand around, everyone. Go back and do what you're supposed to be doing." Chenin withdrew the soul rings on his body as he spoke, but he didn't dare to look Hu Yuhao in the eyes anymore. The Duskwater Alliance was an underground organization, and these underground organizations were sometimes much more efficient and versatile with their operations compared to other, more legitimate corporations. Chenin was the Golden Great Hall's supervisor, and he was also a relatively powerful Soul King. He wielded extraordinary authority and influence in this place, and he was also the qualifying round's chief judge. His subordinates began to move right after he finished his sentence, some people moving to keep things in order, while some other people went ahead to clean up the mess. It didn't take long before Great King's body and the mess around it vanished without a trace. Chenin lowered his voice and asked Hu Yuhao, "Can we speak somewhere in private?" "All right." Hu Yuhao's answer was simple and straightforward. "I have 2 other servants. Can you ask someone to call them over?" "I'll arrange for that immediately." Chenin whispered something to one of his subordinates, and that person hurriedly turned around and left. "Follow me, my valued guests." Chenin turned around to lead the way as he spoke. Hu Yuhao nodded his head gently, and Hikaitu pushed the wheelchair as they followed behind Chen and led them to a small door at the side and exited the Golden Great Hall. They moved through a magnificent walkway, but they didn't have to travel for long before Chen opened another door on the side and invited the 2 of them in. The room was several hundred square meters in surface area, and the walls were covered in solid wood. The room's golden style and layout was not at odds with this underground world. "Please sit," Chenin spoke as he stood beside a luxurious sofa. Hu Yuhao answered, "There's no need for that. You can just say whatever you want to." Chenin's eyes shifted as he lowered his voice and said, "If I may ask, are you guys from?" He paused without finishing his sentence. "The Great King?" Chenin exclaimed. The projection looked exactly like King Wan. The light projection shone with white light circles as it gradually dissipated, and King Wan's expression finally became one of peace and acceptance as he swiftly vanished into thin air. Chenin's face was ghastly pale at this moment, and his body quivered as well. Hu Yuhao said, "Do you want to test me again?" Chenin wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, and he bent down as he replied respectfully, "No, there's no need." Hu Yuhao continued, "You have to keep the 2 of us being here a secret. You can't tell anyone at all. Do you understand? The truth is we are here of our own accord, since it's nice to earn some money while claiming some rare metals for ourselves. Of course, you guys can make some money at the same time. We will only survive if we both reap benefits at the same time, don't you think?" "Yes, yes." Chenin hurriedly followed Hu Yuhao's lead. Hu Yuhao nodded and said, "Then you should give us what we are owed today. We will return for the next round." Chenin asked, "Do you need us to do anything else?" Hu Yuhao waved his hand and said, "I don't need you to do anything else. What we eventually achieve in the contest is entirely up to our own abilities. You've seen what happened to King Wan. If someone else tries to mess around with me or provoke me, that person's outcome won't be as easy as what happened to King Wan. I believe most people haven't had their spirits tortured before. Whoever has to find out will probably remember the sensation on their shattered spiritual imprint for eternity." Chenin shivered involuntarily and said, "Don't worry, I will restrain my subordinates to the best of my ability, and I will definitely adhere to your requests. We won't pass this on within the Duskwater Alliance, and everything will go according to your command." Hu Yuhao nodded his head satisfactorily. "Looks like you're a smart one. Intelligent people tend to live longer." "Thank you for the compliment, sir." Chenin's expression became a little more relaxed, but he was still radiating fear and trepidation. Hu Yuhao said, "All right, my people have returned. We'll make a move first." "All right, let's go." Wang Donga came forward hurriedly to take Hu Yuhao's wheelchair from Hikaitu's hands, and began to push him outside. Hu Yuhao raised his hand for her to stop when they were almost at the door, and he said without turning around, "Chenin, if everything goes according to plan, and if you do everything properly, I will reward you after this contest is finished. If you're willing, it's even possible if you wish to become a part of us. Of course, there's a price to pay, but the returns that you shall receive will be worth a lot more. Chenin was a little taken aback, but he became elated in the next moment as he took a few brisk steps forward and knelt down with one knee beside Hu Yuhao. Thank you for the link up, sir. I will find you again before the contest. You will collate the inventory of metals that will be used for rewards in every round, and you will also give me a list of the bets that have been placed. Yes. Hu Yuhao waved his hand once more, and Wang Donga pushed him out at once. Chenin escorted him out personally, and he directed them all the way to a set of escalators that brought them back to one of the Green Hotel's simpler levels. All right, that's enough. You don't have to send me any further. Remember what I've told you. If my father finds out about me, you know the rest. If that happens, then you will become part of my strength. Your wish is my command. I will definitely follow your orders. Chenin acknowledged hurriedly. Let's go. Hu Yuhao waved his hand, and the company exited the Green Hotel. Once they were past the main door, Hikaitu couldn't help but ask, what were the two of you talking about so mysteriously back there? We'll talk about it when we get back, brother. Hu Yuhao hurriedly interrupted Hikaitu's words, and a voice appeared in Hikaitu's head. Hikaitu felt his heart skip a beat, and he quickly shut his mouth and said nothing more. The four of them gradually disappeared into the night. Hu Yuhao relied on his imitation, and brought everyone back into the Brilliant Delight Hotel. His expression became a lot more relaxed, and Wang Donga helped everyone remove their makeup once they returned to his room. Hikaitu said, "You can speak now, little junior brother. You actually gave me a scare when you lashed out just now." Hu Yuhao said ponderously, "We didn't waste our efforts today, and I've figured some things out. It's no wonder that the Academy could never find traces of the Holy Ghost Church after they appeared. It seems like they've been hiding themselves like that." Hikaitu was momentarily stunned. "Are you saying it's likely that the Dusk River Alliance has something to do with the Holy Ghost Church?" Wang Donga frowned and said, "Doesn't that mean it's too dangerous for us to continue on in the competition?" Hu Yuhao shook his head with a smile on his face. "No, it doesn't. This contest is aimed at raking in profits, and it doesn't mean much to the Holy Ghost Church's coexistence. The church is focused on the Continental Elite Youth Soul Master Tournament. Haven't you guys seen the people that they've sent to participate in the tournament? Their energies aren't channeled toward the Duskwater Alliance, so it's natural that they aren't paying much attention to their events. We are quite safe. Furthermore, the Dusk River Alliance is ultimately one of the church's branches, and they are just a front for earning money and covering their identities. So the Holy Ghost Church won't send high-level individuals to watch over the alliance. The Green Hotel is quite important to the Dusk River Alliance, but the hotel's supervisor is just a soul king, and he's not even an evil soul master." Wang Donga became a little more relieved as she listened to Hu Yuhao's seamless analysis. She nodded and said, "So, we're still participating in the subsequent rounds?" Hu Yuhao tilted his head and said, "Of course. We have to get our rare metals from this contest, and we don't even have to become champions. Isn't it fun and interesting to stir things up within Radiant City's underground organizations? Don't worry, Donga, I will make sure that I return safely, not just for myself, but also for you guys." Hikaitu stood up and patted Hu Yuhao on the shoulder. "It's getting late, little junior brother. Your body isn't in good shape, so you should hurry up and get some rest." Nana also stood up to take her leave. Wang Donga helped Hu Yuhao onto the bed after everyone left, and she brought some warm water to wash his hands and face. Hu Yuhao's body was overflowing with ice-type origin energy of heaven and earth, so the parts of his body that were mobile didn't get dirty at all, so there was no need for her to wash those areas. "You're too exhausted, Yuhao." Wang Donga slipped into his embrace, and felt the chilly aura emanating from his body as she whispered to him. Hu Yuhao smiled and said, "The main reason why you don't want me to continue on in the competition is because you're concerned about me, right? Actually, how can you not tell how safe we are with your intelligence and our abilities?" "Yes," Wang Donga agreed softly. The second elimination round of the Continental Advanced Youth Soul Master Tournament had ended. 42 teams advanced to the third round. Among those 42 teams, only 32 of them could enter the round-robin stage. That would be dependent on their performance in the third elimination round. Victory would ensure progression into the round-robin stage. Even if they failed, they still had an opportunity to fight for points in an additional qualifier round. After the last two elimination rounds, some of the weaker teams were showing signs of fatigue even though they had made it through. Their team members were hurt, and there were fewer of them who could compete, along with other reasons that weakened their chances of progressing in future rounds. These constituted huge problems for them. Such problems didn't exist for the Tang sect. However, the atmosphere within the sect became tenser after the lot drawing for the third elimination round was completed. Shusansha lowered his head to look at his right hand, and a weird expression appeared on his face. Hui Yuhao patted his shoulder and said, "Third senior, it's fine. You can't be blamed." Jiang Nan looked gloomy. "You still dared to volunteer to draw the lot even though your luck is bad." Everyone's expression was also very weird and serious at the same time. Hui Yuhao chortled, "It's just Team Sun Moon. Years ago, we also defeated them even though we were just members of the preparatory squad. Don't tell me that we are scared today, even though we've improved significantly since 5 years ago." This video will end here. Thank you for watching.